Welcome back, folks. We are now going to talk about something that's been a huge topic of conversation, certainly here at Bright Horizons College Coach, as well as the larger world of higher education in the past few weeks. And that is the rollout of the brand new and improved FAFSA. And to help with this discussion, I'm super excited to welcome for her very first appearance on Getting In, my colleague, Jess Mosley. Welcome, Jess.
Hi, thanks, Shannon.
Oh, you're so welcome. We're so glad to have you here on the podcast and also just, here at College Coach.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. You are one of our newer team members here at College Coach, but you're certainly not new to the world of financial aid. Listeners, Jess has been in aid for a long time at Concordia University, Reed College, part of that Portland contingent. I was just talking to Serena from Lewis and Clark about our large Portland contingent, and also most recently University of Chicago. So you have dealt with the FAFSA a lot, right, Jess?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, but now we have a brand new FAFSA. So could you first give us kind of a brief rundown of what's gone on with the FAFSA? Our regular listeners probably know, but if you're just tuning in for the first time, what's unusual about this year and the FAFSA?
Sure. Yeah. So a few years ago, Congress decided they wanted to simplify some of the aspects of the FAFSA. So they decided to implement that this year, and it has delayed the timeline of the FAFSA. So usually the FAFSA comes out on October 1st every year. But this year they decided that they needed a little more time. So they delayed that to December is what they've initially said. And then it became December 31st was the day it would come out by. There was a soft launch a couple days before that where we saw that they had released it and were monitoring it. And then it did technically get released on December 31st, but was only available for about 30 minutes at a time that day. Moving forward to an hour a day or so, moving after that, and then eventually to about 12 hours a day. As of Monday, the Department of Education announced that it was now available for 24 hours a day, even though on the website where the launch page is, it does still say that it's available for short periods of time. They did announce Monday it was available 24 hours a day.
That's fantastic. So the rollout has, I guess we can say, has been sort of slower than what people have hoped for, perhaps?
Yeah, a bit fraught, I think, is kind of the terminology I would use, is that it's not necessarily been as seamless as they were hoping for. I think a lot of parents were hoping that it was going to come out on December 1st, and families that we've spoken with were shocked to find out that it wasn't out that day. But now it seems like it's moving a little bit more smoothly since it's out more regularly and families can go in and submit.
That's perfect. So for the families that have submitted the form, are there any issues that they've been facing? Have there been confusing parts of this new FAFSA?
Yeah, there definitely have been a few things that have kind of taken families a bit of time to figure out. I think one of the most concerning aspects is when the student is doing their portion, they come upon a section after their dependency status has been determined. And so the top of the page will say your dependency status. And if it says dependent, it will then ask a question to the student if they want to apply for direct unsubsidized loans only. That question has confused students and families because it essentially asks, if your parent is unwilling to fill this out, do you believe that is the case? And so then it sounds like you should be answering yes, when actually, if your parent is willing to fill it out, you should say no. So that I think is the most confusing part to a lot of families and even to a lot of administrators who have had to read it multiple times to figure out how they should be answering that question. So when you come upon that part, make sure you're reading carefully. If you are a family where your parents will be helping you fill out the form, you should say yes, or sorry, you should say no to that question specifically.
Yeah, and I would totally agree. When I saw that question, knowing exactly what to expect, I still had to read it through 3 or 4 times to
Right.
figure out, am I supposed to say yes or no? There's like a double negative in the question. I think
Hmm.
they maybe should have employed some more technical writers over there at the Department of
Sure.
Education, because just the way the question is phrased is confusing. So just make sure you're reading that carefully.
Yeah.
And just to make the point to families, don't say my parent is unwilling to fill it out, sort of just for kicks, because they don't want to fill it out, because that will limit in an extreme way what kind of financial aid you can receive. Only unsubsidized loans, no better subsidized loans, no Pell Grants. In most cases, no institutional aid from a college if you are considered a dependent student, which most kind of sort of traditional 18-year-old students are. So just
Hmm.
make sure that you're answering that question carefully. Are there any other confusing issues that folks have run into, Jess?
Yeah, I think one of the other confusing things is that when parents are completing it, the transfer from the IRS happens automatically. You don't actually see the information. And so I think that that has confused some families because they're not able to review what's listed on their tax return based on what transferred from the IRS. So that happens all on the background. And another confusing part of that is if your income is below a certain level, you will
Mhm.
not even need to fill out asset information. And that level is below 60,000 and you don't have to have certain schedules. So there's all sorts of criteria for it. But I've talked to a couple of different parents who have been confused because it skips the asset questions
Mhm.
altogether and just moves straight to the end, basically. So I think that those pieces, it's different than what it's been in years past, where you actually get to see some of the information or you log into the IRS. So now that it transfers automatically, it happens pretty quickly, quite frankly, and that's just a little confusing for
It
people.
really does. And to be perfectly honest, it confused me when I filled out the
Right.
form. I said, wait, I'm at the end already.
Hmm.
Even though I should have known better, I was expecting to see something, some indication, clicking a button. We've now pulled your income tax information over, and it's all completely seamless behind the scenes, where so that the form almost seems too easy.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
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 I think another issue that families have been facing that can be a little bit confusing is the way school selection works as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to fill out the state first, and then you can select the school based on the state, or you can fill out more like about the city and what the name of the school is. But once you select the school, it will say one of 20 schools selected, and then that school will go away. You won't see it until you add another school. So I
Ah,
think that that can sometimes confuse students. They'll say, well, what happened to the last one I selected? Then when you add another school, it will then say 2 of 20 schools selected. So just making sure that you're aware that it is happening in the background. And then once you get to the review screen, you will be able to see all of the schools you selected for that. Mhm.
perfect. Any other issues, or are
I
those
think that
big
those are
ones?
kind of the big ones
Yeah.
that I've noticed.
Yeah.
There definitely are some confusing points with they'll ask you to put in both of your parent information as a student, even though only one parent is filling it out.
Yeah.
Um, you do not have to submit a second parent in that situation. You can just put the one that the parent is going to fill it out. I did test that with a student the other
Mm,
day where they did not want to put the second parent. They didn't want to put his contact information. So we skipped it and it just allowed us to do so. So they just wanted to put in the parent's information who would be filling out the form. Mhm.
that's perfect. Now, considering sort of the slow rollout, and some of these issues, if you've been waiting to fill out the FAFSA, is now the time to do it? And I should probably clarify, we're taping this segment on January 10th. Our listeners will hear it for the first time on January 18th. So if you're a senior in high school and have not filled out the FAFSA yet, it's January 18th is now the time.
I would say now is a safe time to go ahead and do it since it is now available 24 hours a day. Many of our clients that have been doing the FAFSA, as well as people on our team who have completed it, have said once you get in, it's pretty seamless from there. You're able to complete it in one fell swoop. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. So yes, I think that now would be a good time to go ahead and take a shot and fill it out.
That's perfect. And for folks who haven't started yet, but they're taking your advice, okay, I'm going to do it now. Is there anything that folks should be doing in advance of trying to log into that form to prepare for filling out the FAFSA? What should you do up front?
Sure, great question. So first, I definitely have your federal student aid ID set up, and you'll need those separately for the student and the parent that's going to fill out the form. So usually it only takes a few minutes to get that set up, but if there's something with an issue on the verification side, it could take a couple of days to actually get that settled. So doing that ahead of time is a good idea before you're ready to settle down and complete the FAFSA itself. And then the other thing that would be really important to do if your parents are and I should say your biological or adopted parents are divorced, you should also determine which of those parents should be required to fill out the form with you. And the way to do that is to know which parent provided the most financial support in the past 12 months.
Yes. And that is a change from in prior years when I feel like they've done a lot of things to simplify the FAFSA, which is fantastic. This is one where I feel like it's not as simple as it used to be. They used to ask you for the information for the parent who you lived with the majority of the time. And while certainly there are parents who have joint custody, I feel like most of the time you could identify the parent that you've lived with the most. The parent who provides more financial support is, I feel, a little bit trickier for families to ascertain that number.
Yeah, that's
or
correct.
Which parent that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important, that you figure out which parent that is ahead of time so there's not confusion, especially on the student's part, since technically they are supposed to start the application, quote unquote, on their own. So doing that to make sure that they know when they complete their portion, which parent they're submitting to have that information sent to as a contributor on the FAFSA.
Yes. And that's actually a good point, that the student and the parent processes are sort of technologically completely separate. One party logs in, the student logs in, gets the FAFSA started, submits their information, and tell the feds the email address of the parent. The parent is emailed separately to go fill out their portion of the application. So you do have to have those two separate logins and complete the processes theoretically. Separate. Yeah, you can be sitting next to each other.
Exactly. Theoretically separate. If your student is doing it on their own and they want to finish their portion on their own, they will need parent social security numbers if they are a dependent student. So they won't be able to complete it on their own unless they have that parent's social security number. So it is a good idea maybe to have your student sit side by side. Then you'll see the email come in once they add you as a contributor. So that way you'll know that you're ready to fill out your portion when it's time for you to use your section.
That's perfect. Now, what if you get in there and let's say, for example, you're the student and you get it, you start filling it out, you realize you don't have your parent's social security number, you're missing some piece of information, you want to double check on something. Is all progress lost? Or do you have to submit it once you've started? Or is there a way to save?
So it is auto saving as you go along. You can leave the screen, you can log out, log back in, everything will be saved. There is a small save button at the top as well, just to kind of give you peace of mind. But as far as we know, the information does auto save. So if you were missing something you needed, you will be able to log out and log back in later.
That's perfect. And now what if you have submitted the FAFSA and then you realize you made a mistake somewhere on it, or potentially you need to add another school? Can you do that?
Yes. As of this moment, no, you cannot today. But once your FAFSA processes, and our understanding is this should be at the beginning of February, you will be able to log back in and make corrections or add schools as needed. Typically, in a typical year, it's a 3 to 5 processing window, 3 to 5 day processing window. But as of right now, you'll just have to wait until February, and then you should receive a notification saying that your FAFSA has been processed and you should be able to go in and make changes.
That's perfect, Jess. And we are totally out of time. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, listeners, for joining. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts when you get a chance. And we do appreciate your feedback. And I'd also love for you to join us next week when we're going to be discussing student research projects, as well as sports, the athletic recruitment process and athletic scholarships, all of that fun stuff. So do tune in next week. And remember, we are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time and 1 p.m. Pacific.